Hey, welcome back. Today, I want to reply to a question that was asked on a previous video where I showed how to create a 3D model from an image. And in that video, I used an image that was only one color, so it was easy to work with. But the question that was asked was how to convert an image with multiple colors into a 3D model. So here we go. Now, before I start, I want to mention that you can't use this technique to turn any image into a model. If you're trying to turn something like this into a model, or something like this, it's just not going to work. These images have a lot of different colors and values and shadows and highlights, and also depth. So you'd be better off modeling or sculpting this rather than trying to convert it. This technique is good for creating 3D logos or signs or other things that are typically flat. So what you want is something simple with basic flat colors and bold lines. And for this video, I decided to show how I would create a stained glass window from an image. And here's the image I'm going to use. Now, if you've watched any of my previous videos about converting images to 3D models, then you know I use a free program called Inkscape to convert raster images to vector graphics. And I'll leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. So here I have my image open in Inkscape, and in order to convert it, I'll need to select it and then come up to the Path menu and choose Trace Bitmap. And over here on this side, you can see what's happening. It's taking all the darker colors and making them all black, and it's making all of the lighter colors white. And that's based on this threshold setting. And if I adjust the slider, you see it will either add more to the darker colors, or it will start removing the darker colors until I'm left with just the outlines, which is not what I want. So instead of using this single scan option, I'll switch to multicolor, and right away it's looking better, but it's all grayscale values. So instead of brightness steps, I'll switch to colors, and that's better, but the number of colors is limited by this scan slider, which is set to 8. So that means there are only 8 different colors in this image right now, instead of all these different colors over here. So I'm going to increase the number of scans, and as I move the slider, you can see the colors flickering and changing. And once I get up past 50, the colors stop flickering. So it looks like maybe 48 is probably a good setting. So now I'll hit Apply to create the vector graphic. Then I'll switch to the Layers tab, select the image, and hide it for now. And if I zoom in, you notice there's a white outline around all the colored panels. And it's really messy around the edges. So I'm going to delete this one and bring the image back. Then I'll go back to the Path menu and choose Trace Bitmap again. And you see all my settings are still here, but I'm going to change this speckle setting to 8, which will help to clean up the edges a little bit. And I'll also enable this Remove Background option, so all the white will be removed. And now I'll hit Apply, go to the Layers tab, hide the image, and zoom in. And it's looking better. It's still a little messy around the edges, but I won't be able to go any higher with the speckle slider because it will start eating away at these thin areas like this right here. So this is about as good as it's going to get. And I still have this white outline, but I can deal with that in Blender. So I'll go to the File menu, save a copy, and I want to save this as a plain SVG file, and hit Save. And now here in Blender, I'll go to the File menu, Import, and choose Scalable Vector Graphics. Then I'll select my SVG file and Import. And I'll window select everything and then hit the period key on the number pad to zoom in. And you can see that everything is here, separated by color. I can click on the frame, and you see it's a separate object. And all the glass pieces are separate objects. If I click on them, you see they're separated by their individual colors. But the whole thing is really small, so I'll select everything and scale it up to 10 on X and Y. Then I'll rotate it up 90 degrees. And now I need to give the frame some thickness, so I'll select it. And before I do anything else, I need to hit Ctrl A and apply scale. Then I'll come over here to the Object Data Properties, Geometry, and I'll set the extrude amount to 0.0005. Then I'll come up here to the outliner and I'll rename it to Frame. And I'll go ahead and create the metal material. So with the frame selected, I'll switch to Render Display and open up the Materials panel. And I'll click the minus button to delete the current material. And then I'll click the New button and I'll rename it Frame. And I'll set the base color to black. But I don't want it completely black, so I'll set the value to 0.01, the saturation to 0.5, and the hue to 0.7. So it's slightly bluish black. And I'll set the metallic up to 1 and bring the roughness down to 0.15. And now I want to give it some texture, so I'll switch to the Shading tab, and over here in the Node Editor, I'll hit Shift A and add a noise texture. And I'll plug the color into the material output for now, so I can see what it's doing. Next, I'll hit Shift A and add a mapping node and a texture coordinate node. Then I'll plug object into vector on the mapping node, and I'll plug vector into vector on the noise texture. And I'll change the mapping scale to 100 for X, Y, and Z. And you can see I'm starting to get some variation happening. So I'll hit Shift A and add a color ramp and drop it in right here. And now I can drag the black slider over to darken the dark areas and drag the white slider to brighten the light areas. So maybe something like that for now. And I'll come over to the noise texture and I'll set the scale to 15 and the detail to 10 and the roughness to 0.8. Then I'll pull the black slider over a little more, and I think that's looking pretty good. So I'll hit Shift A and add a bump node, and I'll put it in here in front of the color ramp. And I'll plug the color ramp into the height input, and then plug the normal output into the normal input on the principled BSDF. And then I'll plug the BSDF node back into the material output. And now you see I'm getting this textured effect, but it's way too strong. So I'll set the strength to a very small amount, like 0.02. Or maybe 0.05. And I think that looks pretty good. You'll never see it in the render, but I know it's there. And it's good to know how to do this stuff. And that's it for the frame, so I'm going to hide it for now and switch to the Layout tab to start working on the glass panels. And the first thing I need to do is make a list of the various colors and their hex values. So I'll use this dark red for an example. And what I need to do is select it, then come over to the Material panel and click on the color bar, and here's the hex value I need. So I'll highlight the value, then hit Ctrl-C to copy it, and then I'll open up a notepad file and hit Ctrl-V to paste it in. And I'll do the same for this light red. I'll copy and paste the hex value, and the same for one of these mid-range reds. But in the interest of keeping this video as short as possible, I'm just going to show you my notepad file with all the various colors and their hex values. I just went through selecting each color, and then I copied and pasted the hex values for each of them. And you see for the gold and the blue, I selected 4 different colors. So once you have your color list, you can combine all the panels together into groups and remove the existing materials. So I'll start with the blues. I'll select this turquoise panel, and that will select all the other panels with the same color. But you see, it also selects these little extra pieces that I don't want. This is all that messy stuff left over from Inkscape. So I need to switch to edit mode, and then I can select these pieces, right-click and delete point. And it's important to do this before moving on to the next step, because you're going to have problems if you don't get rid of all this extra stuff first. So I'm going to go through all the blue panels and delete all these extra pieces that I don't need. Okay, so now that I've done that, I'll select this panel, then shift select this one, then right click and join. And you see that the color of the first panel I picked has changed to inherit the color of the last color that I picked, which is why it's important to get your colors written down before you start joining the panels together. So I'll continue around the outer edge, joining the panels together until I have a complete group of blue panels. And then over here in the outliner, I'll scroll down and find the object and rename it to blue glass. And since I scaled these earlier, I need to hit Ctrl A and apply scale, and then I'll hide it. And now we'll do the same thing for the gold colors, checking the panels for extra geometry, switch to edit mode, select, right click and delete point. Then once everything looks good, I'll select a panel, shift select another one, right click and join. And then once I have the group complete, I'll hit Ctrl A, apply scale, then go to the outliner, find it, rename it, and hide it. And now I'll go through and do the same for the red panels and the purple panels, and I'll be back when I'm done. Okay, now I have my colored panels grouped together, but you see I still have all these extra paths over here in the outliner. And if I hide the frame and the glass panels, you see there's still a lot of extra stuff hanging around over here. So I'm just going to select all of this and then hit X and delete objects. And now I can unhide everything, and if I zoom in, you see there's still a small gap here between the glass panels and the frame. So to fix that, I'll hit the number 1 key on the number pad to switch to front view. Then I'll select this gold group, and I'll come over here to the object data properties in the geometry section, and I'm going to increase this offset amount to 0.004. And now you can see the panels are extending into the frame, so there's no more gap. So now I'll do the same for the red panels. I'll select them, go to Data Properties, Geometry, set the offset amount to 0.004. And for the most part, it's looking pretty good. But you see in some places, like right here, it's still not enough. So I'll switch to Edit Mode, and I'll just grab these points and pull them over. And I'll hit Alt-Z to switch to X-ray mode so I can see what's happening. And that looks pretty good, so I'll move around and find all the problem areas and make adjustments as necessary. And it looks like I have a problem here with this purple panel that I have to fix. And there's also a problem here with this red panel. It looks like there's too many points here. So I'll just delete a few of them. And that's looking better. Now let me select this purple panel and see what's going on. And it looks like it's the same problem, too many points. So I'll just try deleting a few of these points. And it's basically just trial and error. Delete a point and see if it makes it better or worse. If it makes it worse, hit Ctrl-Z to undo and try deleting a different point. And I think that's looking pretty good, so I'll go ahead and set the offset amount. And I guess we still have a problem, so I'll just try deleting more of these points. And maybe try moving them around and adjusting them until the problem goes away. And I think that fixed it, so now I'll go through and adjust the panels, same as I did for the red ones. And now I'll select the blue panels and set the offset to 0.004. And I think that's looking pretty good. But let me just double check some of these purple ones again and make sure I got all of them adjusted. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. So now I want to give these panels some thickness, but I can't just set this extrude amount because you see the whole thing goes haywire for some reason. So I'll set this back to 0 and then I'll right click and convert to mesh. Now I'll hide the frame and come over to the modifiers panel, and I'm going to add a solidify modifier. I'll set the offset to 0 so it will extrude equally in the positive and negative direction, and I'll set the thickness to 0.003, and then I'll right click and shade auto smooth to fix this shading issue, and that looks better. So I'll apply the solidify modifier, and then I'll go through and do the same for the other panels. So now that the model is finished, I need to turn these panels into multicolored glass. And I'll start here with the blue glass. So I'll select it, then come over here to the material panel, and I'll hit the minus button to delete the material. Then I'll switch to the shading tab and rendered display. And now with the panel selected, I'll click the new button to add a new material, and I'll call it blue glass. And the first thing I'll do is delete this principled BSDF node, and then hit Shift A and add a glass BSDF node. And I'll plug it into the surface input. And now I have something that looks like a mirror. But if I add a sphere and move it back here, you can see it, so it is in fact glass. So I'll delete the sphere, and I'm going to add a few different nodes. I'll hit Shift A and add a geometry node, a color ramp, a hue saturation, a transparent BSDF, and a mix shader. I'll plug the geometry node into the color ramp using this random per island option. Then I'll plug the color ramp into the color input on the hue saturation node. I'll plug the hue saturation into the transparent BSDF. Then plug the transparent node into the upper shader input on the mix shader. And I'll plug the glass node into the lower shader input. And then I'll plug the mix shader into the surface input on the material output node. And I'm also going to plug the hue saturation into the color input on the glass node. Now you can't really see what's happening because the color ramp is black and white. So I'll switch to the Layout tab and I'll add a plane. And I'll rotate it 90 degrees and then move it back a little bit. And scale it up. And I'll add a sunlight and rotate it around and position it about there. And I'll bump the strength up to 2. And now when I switch back to the shading workspace, you can see all the various shades of gray that I have happening. And you can see the light is passing through the glass and displaying on the plane back here. And that's because of this transparent node. If I unplug it, you see the light isn't passing through the glass anymore. So this node is very important. But I don't want black and white glass. It needs to be multicolored. And that's where all those hex values that I copied and pasted into my notepad become very important. So I'll come over here to my color ramp and I'll start with this black value. If I click on the white slider, I'm looking at the white color. And if I click on the black slider, I'm looking at the black color. So I want to set this black slider to dark blue. So I'll open up my notepad and I want this dark value here. So I'll highlight it and hit Ctrl+C to copy. Then I'll come back over here and click on this black color bar. Highlight this hex value, hit Ctrl+V to paste, and then hit Enter. And now I have dark blue instead of black. And you can see it up here on the model. So now I'll go back to Notepad and copy this turquoise color. Then I'll click on the white slider to select it. Then click on the color bar, highlight the hex value, hit Ctrl+V to paste, and hit Enter. So now I have these two colors, but I want to add the mid and light blue colors as well. So I'll hit this plus button twice, and that will add 2 more sliders in the middle. So now I'll go back to Notepad, copy this mid blue hex value, come back here, click on the new slider that's closest to the dark blue, click on the color bar, highlight the hex value, Ctrl+V to paste, and hit Enter. Then back to Notepad, copy this light blue value, back over here, click on this slider that's closest to the turquoise, click on the color bar, highlight the hex value, Ctrl+V to paste, and then hit Enter. So now all these glass panes are colored in various shades of blue, and you can adjust the color values by adjusting these sliders. If you want more dark colors or more light colors or whatever, just move the sliders around. So I think I'll do something like that for now. You can also add more or less saturation by adjusting this value. And you can adjust the hue if you want to change the colors. But I'll leave the hue alone, and I'll keep the saturation at 1.3. So now I have colored glass, but it's not looking like stained glass, which is kind of textured and warped, so I need to add a few more nodes. I'll add a noise texture, a color ramp, a mapping node, and a texture coordinate node. I'll plug object into the vector input on the mapping node. I'll plug vector into vector on the noise texture, and I'll plug color into the color ramp. And then I'll select all of these nodes, hit Shift-D to duplicate, and I'm going to drag them down here. And this bottom noise texture will be controlling the waviness of the glass. So I'm going to unplug the color for now and plug this color ramp into the material output temporarily so I can see what it's doing. But right now it's not doing much, so I'll set the mapping scale to 10 for X, Y, and Z. And for the noise texture, I'll leave the scale set to 5, but I'll change the detail to 1 and the roughness to 0.25. And I'll adjust the black and white sliders to about there for now. And next I'll add a bump node. And I'll plug the color ramp into the height, and then I'll plug the normal into the normal input on the glass node. And I'll plug the mix shader back into the material output. And that's starting to look like something, but the bump strength is too much. So I'll set the strength to 0.15 and the distance to 0.3. And I'm going to enable this invert option. And I think that's looking okay, but I need to add in the grainy texture. So I'll plug this color ramp into the material output to see what it's doing. And I'll set the mapping scale to 100. I'll adjust the black and white sliders to about there. And I'll leave the noise texture scale at 5, but I'll set the detail to 10. And I think that's looking pretty good. So now I'll add another bump node and drop it in front of this first one. Then I'll plug the color ramp into the height input, and I'll plug the mix shader back into the material output. But the bump strength is way too much, so I'll set the strength to 0.06 and the distance to 0.2. And now you see I'm getting that grainy texture I was looking for. So I think that's looking pretty good for the blue glass, but now I need this same material applied to the other colors. And all I'm going to do is copy and paste. So I'll select the gold glass, go to the material properties, and click the minus button to delete the material. Then click the new button and name it gold glass. Then I'll switch back to the blue glass, and I'll select everything except the material output. Then I'll hit Ctrl C to copy, switch back to the gold glass, and hit Ctrl V to paste. And now I can delete the principled BSDF and plug the mix shader into the material output. And now I have blue glass here, but I need it to be gold. So all I have to do is copy and paste the hex values from my notepad into the color ramp. And now I have gold glass. And as before, I can adjust the sliders to get more dark or light colors. And now I just need to do the same for the red and purple. The only difference is the red and purple only have 3 colors instead of 4. So once you get the red color set up, copy and paste the gold material. Then come over to the color ramp, select one of these middle sliders, and then hit the minus button to delete it. Then just copy and paste the values from your notepad. And if you're not happy with the variation, you can always add another slider and then adjust the colors to get some different variations. So I'll go ahead and do the purple glass and come back when I'm done. And here's the completed window. And here's the final rendering that I put together. Okay, so that's about it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post them below. And if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.